Sweetheart, I need you to pretend you're my son's wife. Starting right now. Zoe Schuyler's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a perfect twist of pasta suspended in the air. She blinked, certain she'd misheard. The elegant woman now standing beside her table, uninvited, smiled like they were old friends sharing a delightful secret over aperitifs. I'm sorry. What? Zoe managed, setting down her fork carefully. The woman was striking in that effortless way money could buy but class refined. Silver hair swept into a soft chignon, pearl earrings catching the candlelight, a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than Zoe's monthly rent. Her eyes sparkled with equal parts desperation and determination. My name is Isabella Bianchi, the woman said, her voice warm but urgent. And I know this sounds absolutely insane, but I wouldn't ask if I weren't desperate. She gestured toward a corner table near the windows. That's my son, Marco. And I need you to be his wife for approximately 3 hours. Zoe followed her gesture and immediately understood why her brain had short-circuited. The man sitting alone at the corner table was devastating, tall even while seated, with shoulders that filled out his black suit like it had been tailored by someone who understood exactly what they were working with. Bronze skin that suggested Mediterranean heritage. Dark hair styled back, showing off a face that belonged on magazine covers, sharp jawline accented by a neat beard, brown eyes that were currently staring at his phone with an expression of profound boredom. A gold chain glinted at his throat where his white dress shirt was unbuttoned just enough to be interesting. An expensive watch caught the light when he reached for his wine glass. Everything about him screamed power, money, and a complete lack of patience for whatever he was currently enduring. He was absolutely ridiculously gorgeous, and he looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. I don't understand, Zoe said slowly, tearing her eyes away from the man. Why would you need me to... $10,000, Isabella said simply. The number hung in the air between them like a lifeline Zoe hadn't known she was drowning without. $10,000. Her rent increase notice flashed through her mind. The promotion she'd lost last week to someone less qualified but better connected. The stack of bills on her kitchen counter that seemed to multiply every time she looked away. The reason she was sitting in this expensive Italian restaurant in the first place, because after the worst week of her life, she decided she deserved one nice meal before going back to ramen and regret. 10,000, Zoe repeated carefully, to pretend to be your son's wife for 3 hours. Less than 3, actually. We have a lunch meeting with the Castellano family in 90 minutes. Old business associates. Very traditional. Very conservative. Isabella's smile turned slightly conspiratorial. The patriarch believes unmarried men are unstable, unreliable. He's been hesitant to finalize an important business expansion because he thinks Marco lacks the settling influence of a good wife. And you want me to be that wife? I want you to help my son secure a deal he's been working toward for months. And yes, get his family off his back about settling down. Isabella's expression softened. Look, I know this is crazy, but the moment I saw you sitting here, I knew you were perfect. Perfect for what? You don't even know me. I know enough. Isabella gestured toward Zoe's table. You're dining alone, but you're not lonely. You thanked the busboy by name when he refilled your water. You've been savoring every bite of your meal like it matters. And when that rude couple complained about their perfectly fine wine, you rolled your eyes but didn't say anything because you're kind enough not to make the waiter's night worse. Zoe blinked, surprised. She hadn't realized anyone was watching her that closely. You have grace, Isabella continued. Warmth. You're beautiful but not flashy. Poised but genuine. Exactly the kind of woman who would make my son look like he'd finally grown up and chosen well. She paused. And honestly, we're running out of time. The Castellanos are expecting to meet Marco's wife. If he shows up single, we lose the deal. If he shows up with you, we win. Zoe looked past Isabella toward Marco again. He'd looked up from his phone and was now watching them with an expression somewhere between resignation and dread. Their eyes met across the restaurant. He was even more devastating up close to her imagination. Zoe's practical side screamed that this was insane. Dangerous, even. You didn't just agree to play pretend wife to a stranger because his mother offered you money. But her impulsive side, the part of her that had been buried under bills and disappointments and playing it safe, whispered something else entirely. When was the last time she'd done something completely crazy? When was the last time she'd felt anything other than tired? And honestly, he was so beautiful it was almost offensive. What do you say? Isabella pressed gently. Help an old woman save her son from his own stubbornness? Zoe took a breath, made a decision she'd probably regret. One lunch meeting, 3 hours maximum, then I never see you people again. Isabella's smile was radiant. Deal. She pulled out a slim wallet, extracted 5 crisp $100 bills, and placed them on the table. Deposit. The rest after the Castellanos leave happy. Before Zoe could change her mind, Isabella linked their arms and steered her across the restaurant. Marco stood as they approached, and Zoe's breath caught. He was even taller than she'd thought, easily over 6 feet. The suit jacket did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders or the obvious strength in his frame. Up close she could see the tiredness around his eyes, the tension in his jaw, and the way he looked at his mother suggested he knew exactly what was happening and was absolutely not pleased about it. Marco, darling, Isabella said brightly. This is Zoe, your wife. Silence crashed over their corner of the restaurant. Marco's brown eyes shifted to Zoe, assessing, careful, with a hint of something that might have been apology. Ma, he said slowly, his voice a deep rumble that did unfortunate things to Zoe's pulse. What did you do? I solved your problem, Isabella replied cheerfully. The Castellanos arrive in 90 minutes. You need a wife. Now you have one. Marco's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath his beard. He looked at Zoe again, this time with something closer to resignation. I'm sorry about this, he said quietly. My mother has no boundaries and an alarming amount of audacity. I'm getting that impression, Zoe replied, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. You don't have to do this. Whatever she's offered you. $10,000, Zoe said bluntly. And honestly, after the week I've had, playing pretend wife for a few hours sounds almost relaxing compared to my actual life. Something shifted in his expression. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Fair enough. He extended his hand. Marco Bianchi. Apparently your husband for the afternoon. Zoe shook his hand, ignoring the way warmth spread up her arm at the contact. Zoe Schuyler. Apparently your impulse decision. This time he did smile, small but genuine. At least you're honest about it. Isabella clapped her hands together. Wonderful. Now we need to get Zoe something more appropriate to wear, brief her on basic family information, and get to the house before the Castellanos arrive. Marco, darling, bring the car around. Zoe and I will settle her bill. Marco looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. He nodded once, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the exit. Zoe watched him go, noting the way every woman in the restaurant tracked his movement. He's really your son, she murmured. Every stubborn, beautiful inch of him, Isabella confirmed proudly. She squeezed Zoe's hand. Thank you for this, truly. I know it's unusual. Unusual is putting it mildly. But I have a good feeling about you two. Isabella's eyes twinkled with something that looked suspiciously like matchmaking glee. A very good feeling. Zoe chose to ignore that particular implication. 20 minutes later, she was in the back of a sleek black Mercedes, sitting next to Isabella while Marco drove. He hadn't said much beyond confirming her address to grab some things, but she felt his attention in the rearview mirror, quick glances, assessing. So, Zoe said, breaking the silence. What do I need to know about being Mrs. Bianchi? Marco's eyes met hers in the mirror. That I'm sorry you got dragged into my mother's schemes. Marco, be helpful, Isabella chided. Zoe, it's simple. The Castellanos are old-fashioned but kind. The patriarch, Antonio, values family and tradition. His wife, Rosa, is sweet but observant. They have 3 children, 2 sons who run the business with Antonio, and a daughter, Sophia, who's lovely but quiet. And what does your family do exactly? Zoe asked carefully. Legitimate business now, Marco said, his tone making it clear there was a story there. Import, export, real estate development. My father had more complicated ventures. I've spent the last 5 years cleaning that up. Which is exactly why Antonio has been hesitant, Isabella added. He remembers the old days. He needs to see that Marco is different, stable, settled. Hence the instant wife, Zoe finished. Hence you, Marco confirmed, meeting her eyes in the mirror again. They pulled up to a massive estate that made Zoe's stomach drop. Wrought iron gates, manicured lawns, a house that looked like it had been transported stone by stone from Tuscany. This is your house, Zoe said flatly. Unfortunately, Marco replied, which was somehow both concerning and endearing. Isabella ushered them inside, and Zoe barely had time to process the marble floors and crystal chandeliers before she was being pushed into a guest room. Marco, darling, entertain our guests when they arrive. Zoe and I need 15 minutes. What followed was a whirlwind of Isabella pulling a dress from seemingly nowhere, a beautiful sage green that fit perfectly, fixing Zoe's hair, and rapid-firing information about the family. You and Marco met at a charity gala 6 months ago. You work in event planning, you love jazz music and terrible action movies. Your favorite food is anything Marco's mother cooks. Got it? That's a lot of specific lies, Zoe said, fastening the simple gold necklace Isabella handed her. The best lies are specific, Isabella replied wisely. Now, most importantly, be yourself. They'll love you. How do you know? Because my son already does, Isabella said, then swept out before Zoe could process that statement. Zoe took a breath, checked her reflection. She looked good, better than she had any right to after being ambushed in a restaurant, and headed downstairs. Voices drifted from what she assumed was a living room. Warm, Italian-accented English mixed with Marco's deeper tones. She turned the corner and froze. The Castellano family was already there. An older couple radiated that particular brand of old-world elegance. 2 men in their 30s flanked them, and a beautiful woman around Zoe's age stood slightly apart. And Marco, standing near the windows, looked up the moment she appeared. Something passed between them. A moment of pure electric awareness. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, and before Zoe could prepare herself, his hand was warm on her lower back, drawing her close. Everyone, he said, his voice somehow both casual and possessive. This is my wife, Zoe. Antonio Castellano's weathered face broke into a genuine smile. Ah, finally we meet the woman who tamed our Marco. Zoe barely had time to panic before Marco's thumb traced a small circle on her back, reassuring, grounding. She smiled, let herself lean into him just slightly, and stepped into the role she'd been bought to play. It's wonderful to meet you all, she said warmly. Marco's told me so much about you. Rosa Castellano immediately engulfed her in a hug. You're beautiful, and those eyes, so honest. The afternoon that followed was surreal. They moved to a dining room where lunch was already prepared. Zoe answered questions carefully, sticking to Isabella's script but adding her own touches. She laughed at Antonio's jokes, complimented Rosa's bracelet, and asked Sophia about her interests with genuine curiosity. And through it all, Marco stayed close. His hand found hers under the table. He refilled her water without being asked. When Antonio asked a probing question about their relationship, Marco's answer was smooth, confident. I knew after our second date, he said, looking at Zoe with an expression that was probably acting, but felt dangerously real. She laughed at my terrible jokes and called me out when I was being stubborn. I'd never met anyone who treated me like just Marco. Zoe's heart did something complicated in her chest. The afternoon stretched on. Isabella served espresso and biscotti. The men discussed business while Zoe, Rosa, and Sophia talked about everything else. And slowly, Zoe forgot she was performing. These people were genuinely kind. Marco's hand holding hers felt natural. When Isabella caught her eye and smiled, Zoe smiled back without thinking. It was only when the Castellanos were preparing to leave that reality crashed back. Antonio shook Marco's hand firmly. We have a deal, my friend. I'll have the contracts drawn up next week. Marco's relief was palpable. Thank you, Antonio. This means everything. Thank your wife, Antonio said, turning to Zoe. She's exactly what you needed. Don't mess it up. Marco looked at Zoe, something unreadable in his expression. I won't. After a flurry of goodbyes and promises to have them over soon, the Castellanos finally left. The door closed. Silence filled the enormous house. Isabella was grinning like she'd won the lottery. That was perfect, absolutely perfect. Zoe stepped away from Marco, suddenly aware of how close they'd been standing. Well, that was something. You were incredible, Marco said quietly. Seriously, thank you. Isabella pulled out an envelope, handing it to Zoe. The rest as promised, plus a little extra for being brilliant. Zoe took it, the weight of money and unreality heavy in her hand. I should go. Marco will drive you, Isabella insisted. It's the least we can do. The car ride back to her apartment was quieter. Zoe stared out the window, processing what she'd just done. I really am sorry about all of this, Marco said as they pulled up to her building. Don't be. I needed the money. You needed a wife. Everyone wins. She reached for the door handle. Zoe. She looked back. Marco was watching her with that same intense focus from the restaurant. Would you have dinner with me? A real one. No schemes, no family, no performance. Just us. Her heart stuttered. Why? Because you made me laugh today, and I haven't done that in longer than I care to admit. He hesitated. And because I'd like to actually know the woman I just spent 3 hours pretending to be married to. Zoe should say no. This was already complicated enough, but when she looked into his brown eyes, warm and hopeful, and surprisingly vulnerable, she found herself nodding. Okay, one dinner. His smile transformed his entire face. I'll call you. Zoe gave him her number, climbed out of the car, and walked into her building feeling like she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her life. Behind her, Marco sat in the car, watching her disappear inside, already planning when to call. Tomorrow felt too far away, but 3 days felt like playing games. He'd call her in the morning. Inside her apartment, Kelsey took one look at Zoe's face and squealed. Oh my God, what happened to you? Zoe looked at her roommate, at the envelope full of money, at her phone where Marco Bianchi's contact information now lived. I think, she said slowly, I just agreed to something absolutely insane. Good insane or bad insane? Zoe thought about Marco's smile, the way his hand felt on her back, how easily they'd fallen into rhythm together. I have no idea. But somewhere in her chest, something that had been dormant for months was starting to wake up. And it felt dangerously close to hope. Marco called at 8 the next morning. Zoe was still in bed, scrolling through her phone and pretending yesterday hadn't been the strangest day of her life when his name lit up her screen. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. You said you'd call, she said, instead of hello. I didn't think you meant before I'd had coffee. His laugh was low, warm. I'm impatient when I want something. Is that a problem? Her stomach flipped. Depends on what you want. Coffee with you this morning. There's a place near your apartment that makes the best espresso in the city. Zoe sat up. How do you know where I live? I drove you home yesterday. How do you know there's good coffee near me? I know everything about coffee in this city. It's a problem. A pause. So? Will you have coffee with a man who has obsessive caffeine knowledge? She should say no. Give herself time to think. Process. Instead, she heard herself say, Give me 40 minutes. I'll be outside in 30. He hung up before she could argue. Kelsey appeared in her doorway, hair in a messy bun, clutching a mug of tea. Was that him? How did you... You have that smile. The dangerous one. Kelsey leaned against the doorframe. Be careful, Zoe. Rich, gorgeous guys who hire fake wives don't usually end well. His mother hired me, not him. Even worse. You're dealing with an Italian mama who's clearly scheming. But Kelsey was smiling. Wear the blue sweater. It makes your eyes pop. 28 minutes later, Zoe stepped outside to find Marco leaning against a sleek black car, different from yesterday's Mercedes. This one was a sports car that probably cost more than her yearly salary. He wore dark jeans, a charcoal Henley, and sunglasses that should have looked pretentious but somehow just made him more devastating. "You're early," she said. "Told you, impatient." He opened the passenger door. "Shall we?" The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. Nothing fancy. Warm brick walls, mismatched furniture, the rich smell of fresh ground beans. "This doesn't seem like your usual scene," Zoe observed as they slid into a corner booth. "What's my usual scene?" "I don't know. Somewhere with a Michelin star and a waiter who judges your wine choices." Marco grinned. "I hate those places. All performance, no substance." He flagged down a server. 2 espressos. "And whatever pastry she wants." "Almond croissant," Zoe said, then paused. "How did you know I'd want pastry? You savored every bite of dinner yesterday like it mattered. You're not someone who skips the good parts." The observation felt intimate, personal. Their coffee arrived quickly. Marco watched her take the first sip, waiting. "Okay," Zoe admitted. "This is incredible." "Told you." He relaxed into his seat. "So, Zoe Schuyler, who works in event planning and saves her money for one nice dinner a month. Tell me something real." "That wasn't real. That was the script my mother fed you. I want the truth." Zoe considered him. "What do I get in return?" "Equal exchange. One truth for one truth." She took another sip. "Fine. I don't work in event planning yet. I want to. I work in HR for a tech company I hate, planning events on the side, saving every penny to start my own business." Marco nodded slowly. "That's why you needed the money." "Part of it. The other part is my landlord raised my rent. I lost a promotion to someone whose only qualification was being the VP's nephew, and I was about to start choosing between electricity and groceries." She met his eyes. "Your turn. What's the real deal with your family business?" His expression shuddered slightly. "My father ran, let's call it a complicated empire. Some of it legitimate, some of it very much not. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited all of it, the good, the bad, and the pieces that kept me up at night. I've spent every day since cleaning it up, legitimizing operations, cutting ties with people who wanted to keep things the old way." "Like who?" "Business partners who thought I was too young, too soft, too American." He turned his coffee cup in slow circles. "They were half right. I am different than my father. I don't want to rule through fear or force. I want to build something clean, something I can be proud of. Is that why the Castellano deal matters so much? Antonio represents the old guard. If he trusts me, others will follow. It's about credibility as much as business." Marco looked up. "Which is why what you did yesterday, helping me, it wasn't just acting. You gave me legitimacy I've been fighting for." The weight of that settled between them. "I'm glad I could help," Zoe said quietly, "even if it was weird." Speaking of weird. Marco pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. "My mother texted me 17 times last night." Zoe laughed. "What did she say?" "Mostly variations on, 'She's perfect, don't mess this up. When are you seeing her again? I knew she was the one.'" He scrolled through. "And this morning she sent me a recipe for wedding cake, with the message, 'just in case.'" "Oh my God. She's subtle like a freight train." But he was smiling. "Fair warning, she's probably going to call you. She doesn't have my number. She has 17 ways to get it. Isabella Bianchi is terrifyingly resourceful." They talked for an hour, then 2. The cafe filled and emptied around them. Zoe learned Marco hated mornings but forced himself to run at 6 a.m. because his father never exercised and died of a heart attack at 58. Marco learned Zoe's mother lived 2 states away. Her younger brother was in college and she sent them both money whenever she could. "You take care of everyone," Marco observed. "Someone has to." "Who takes care of you?" The question caught her off guard. "I do." "That sounds lonely." "It's practical." Marco reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "What if it didn't have to be either? Zoe's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and froze. "What's wrong?" Marco asked immediately. "Your mother." Zoe showed him the message. "Darling Zoe, I hope Marco is treating you well. The Castellanos want to have dinner with you both on Friday. Antonio was so charmed. 7 p.m. at Lucia's. I'll text you the address. Wear something lovely. Isabella." "How does she have my number?" Zoe asked. Marco sighed. "Told you. Terrifyingly resourceful." He looked at her carefully. "You don't have to do this again. The deal with Antonio is done. You fulfilled your obligation. How much is she paying this time?" "Zoe, I'm serious. What's the rate for a second performance?" Marco leaned forward. "I'll pay you, not her. Double what she gave you yesterday. But only if you actually want to do it." "Why wouldn't I want $20,000? "Because pretending is exhausting. Because my family is a lot. Because—" He stopped, jaw tight. "Because I don't want you there as an employee. I want you there because you want to be." Her heart did something complicated. "What if I want both? The money and the—" She gestured vaguely between them. "Whatever this is." Marco was quiet for a long moment. "Then we do it your way. But I have one condition." "What?" "When it's just us. No family, no Castellanos, no performance. We're honest, completely honest." Zoe extended her hand across the table. "Deal." He shook it, his grip warm and solid. "Deal." They left the cafe and Marco drove her home. At her building, he walked her to the door. "Friday," he said. "I'll pick you up at 6:30. "Marco." He stepped closer. "Yeah?" "What are we doing? Really?" His eyes searched hers. "Honestly, I have no idea, but I want to find out." Then he did something that made her breath catch. He lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles, old-fashioned, devastating, and walked away. Zoe stood on the sidewalk, heart racing, watching him drive away. Inside, Kelsey was waiting with wine and interrogation eyes. "Spill. Everything." Zoe told her about the coffee, the conversation, the second dinner invitation. "You're getting paid to date a gorgeous billionaire," Kelsey said slowly. "And the problem is what exactly?" "That I'm starting to like him for real, not for the money." "Oh, honey." Kelsey pulled her into a hug. "That's not a problem. That's the whole point." The week passed in a blur of text messages and phone calls. Marco sent her pictures of terrible coffee from business meetings with the caption, "Nothing compares." She sent him photos of disastrous event planning clients with, "This is my life." They talked on the phone every night, never for less than an hour, about everything and nothing. His childhood in two worlds, American schools, Italian summers. Her dreams of running her own company, throwing events that actually mattered. By Friday, Zoe was nervous for entirely different reasons than the first time. She wore a deep blue dress Kelsey insisted on buying for her. "Consider it an investment in your happiness," Kelsey had said, refusing to take no for an answer. Marco arrived exactly on time, in a dark suit that made him look dangerous and elegant all at once. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "You're not bad yourself." In the car, he reached over and took her hand. "Ready for round two? With your family or with you?" "Both, hopefully." Lucia's was intimate, expensive, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise because everyone who mattered already knew about it. The Castellano family was already seated when they arrived. Antonio stood immediately, embracing Marco. "My friend, and the lovely Zoe." This dinner was easier. Zoe wasn't performing anymore. She was just being herself. She talked to Rosa about her mother, to Sofia about event planning, to the Castellano sons about their business expansion plans. And when Marco's hand found hers under the table, she didn't think about the money or the arrangement. She just thought about how right it felt. After dinner, Antonio pulled Marco aside for business talk. Rosa kept Zoe company, showing her photos of her grandchildren. "You're good for him," Rosa said quietly in her Italian-accented English. "I see how he looks at you, like you're the only person in the room." "We haven't been together that long," Zoe deflected. "Time doesn't matter. My Antonio knew after 1 week. Took him 3 months to convince me, but he knew. Rosa patted her hand. Marco knows too. I see it. The evening ended with promises to get together again soon. In the car, Marco was quiet. What did Antonio want to talk about? Zoe asked. Expanding the partnership. He wants to bring me in on a major development project. Marco glanced at her. He said his biggest concern before was that I wasn't stable enough, that I would make reckless decisions. But after meeting you, he trailed off. I made you look stable. You made me feel stable. He pulled the car over suddenly, parking along a quiet street overlooking the city lights. Can I tell you something? We promised honesty. Marco turned in his seat to face her fully. I've been thinking about you constantly. Not about the deal or my mother's scheming or any of it. Just you. The way you laugh when something actually surprises you. How you remember everyone's names. The fact that you take care of everyone around you but bristle when someone tries to take care of you. Zoe's breath caught. And I know this started as something transactional, but it doesn't feel that way anymore. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. At least not for me. Does it for you? She should lie. Keep it simple. Take the money and maintain boundaries. Instead, she told the truth. No, it doesn't feel transactional. She leaned closer. It feels terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I don't know yet. Marco smiled, that rare, genuine one that transformed his whole face. Can I kiss you? For real this time. Not for show. I think you better. He cupped her face with both hands and kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious. Zoe's hands found his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened. It was nothing like the performance kisses she'd imagined. It was real and warm and made her forget every reason this was complicated. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. I'm in trouble, he murmured. Why? Because I want to do that again and again, and I'm not sure I can go back to pretending. Then don't, Zoe whispered. His phone rang, shattering the moment. Marco glanced at the screen and groaned. My mother. Again. He answered on speaker. Ma, we just left dinner. I know. But darling, I have the most wonderful news. Isabella's excitement crackled through the line. Nona's birthday is in 2 weeks and she wants to meet Zoe. Everyone will be there. Your cousins from Italy, Uncle Vincent, Aunt Carmela, everyone. Marco and Zoe exchanged glances. Ma, that's a lot. It's family, darling, and Zoe is family now. A pause. You are coming, aren't you, dear? Zoe thought about the money, about Marco's hand in hers, about how this had stopped feeling like a job somewhere around the second hour in the coffee shop. Of course, she heard herself say. I wouldn't miss it. Isabella squealed with delight and hung up after extracting promises about dress colors and arrival times. In the sudden quiet, Marco looked at Zoe with something between gratitude and concern. You don't have to. I want to. And she realized it was true. Besides, meeting the whole family, that's got to be worth at least another performance fee. He laughed, but his eyes were serious. What if I don't want to pay you anymore? Why not? Because then it's not business. It's just us. Zoe's heart hammered. Marco, I'm not asking you to decide now, but think about it. He started the car again. And for what it's worth, I'm already in, completely. He drove her home, walked her to the door, and kissed her once more. Slower this time, deeper, a promise of everything he wasn't saying out loud. When Zoe finally made it inside, Kelsey took one look at her face and grinned. Oh, you're in so much trouble. I know, Zoe said, touching her lips where she could still feel Marco's kiss. Good trouble? Zoe thought about his smile, the way he listened like every word mattered, how safe she felt when his hand held hers. The best kind. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered warnings. This was happening too fast. She was falling too hard. And when reality crashed back in, and it always did, someone was going to get hurt. She just hoped it wouldn't be her. The 2 weeks between the dinner and Nona's birthday party felt like living in 2 different worlds. During the day, Zoe worked her regular job, planned events for demanding clients, and pretended her life was normal. At night, she texted Marco until her eyes couldn't stay open. They talked about everything: his frustrations with business partners who still saw him as his father's son, her dreams of quitting her corporate job to work for herself, their shared love of old jazz records and terrible action movies. They went on 3 more dates. Real ones. No family, no performance, just them. Coffee that turned into lunch. Lunch that turned into walking through the city until sunset. A movie where they barely watched the screen because they were too busy talking in whispers that made the other moviegoers shush them. By the time Nona's party arrived, Zoe had a problem. She was falling for Marco Bianchi, and she had no idea how to stop. "You're panicking," Kelsey observed, watching Zoe try on her 5th dress. "Why are you panicking?" "Because I'm about to meet his entire family. And they think I'm his wife. No, wait. They think I'm his girlfriend now, right? Or are we still pretending to be married? I can't remember what story we're using." "Breathe." Kelsey handed her the emerald green dress. "This one. It's perfect. And you're spiraling because you actually care what they think." "Of course I care. His mother orchestrated this whole thing. His grandmother is turning 90, and apparently there will be 200 people there who all want to judge whether I'm good enough for the golden boy of the Bianchi family." "Zoe," Kelsey grabbed her shoulders, "you are good enough, more than good enough. And if Marco's family can't see that, then they're idiots." Zoe took a shaky breath. "What if I mess up? Then you mess up. Welcome to real relationships. They're messy." Kelsey smiled. "Now put on the dress and go meet your future in-laws." The Bianchi estate was transformed. String lights hung from every tree. Tables covered in white linens dotted the expansive lawn. A small band played Italian music near a makeshift dance floor, and everywhere were people. Marco met her at the entrance, looking unfairly gorgeous in a navy suit with no tie, the top buttons of his white shirt undone. "You look terrified," he said, pulling her close. "There are so many people." "I know. My family breeds like rabbits. It's a problem." He kissed her forehead. "But you've already charmed the most important ones. Everyone else is just extra credit. Your 90-year-old grandmother is here. That's not extra credit. That's the final exam." Marco laughed. "Nona will love you. She loves everyone who isn't afraid to eat her cooking and tell her when she's being ridiculous." "Does anyone tell her she's being ridiculous?" "God, no. We all value our lives." He took her hand and led her into the chaos. The next hour was a blur of introductions. Uncle Vincent, who was exactly as loud and enthusiastic as Marco had warned, swept Zoe into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "Finally, a beautiful girl who isn't scared of our Marco." Aunt Carmela was more reserved, studying Zoe with sharp eyes over a glass of wine. "You work in event planning?" "Trying to start my own business," Zoe said carefully. Carmela's expression gave nothing away. "Ambitious. Good. Marco needs someone with spine." Cousins Tony and Gianna were easier. Tony regaled her with embarrassing Marco childhood stories while Gianna rolled her eyes and apologized for her family. "We're a lot. If you run screaming, no one would blame you." "I'm tougher than I look," Zoe replied, making Gianna grin. Then there was Nona. She sat in a throne-like chair on the patio, a tiny woman in black lace who radiated authority despite being 4'0". When Marco brought Zoe over, every conversation nearby died. "Nona," Marco said in Italian, then switched to English. "This is Zoe." Nona's dark eyes, sharp despite her age, examined Zoe from head to toe. Then she said something in rapid Italian that made Marco laugh. "What did she say?" Zoe whispered. "She said you have good hips for babies and intelligent eyes, which is a better combination than the last girl I brought home who had neither." Zoe felt her face heat. "There was a last girl?" "Years ago. Didn't last." Marco's hand found the small of her back. "Nona approves of you. That's all that matters." Nona spoke again, and Marco translated. "She wants to know if you can cook. I make a decent pasta," Zoe offered. Nona rattled off another string of Italian, accompanied by emphatic hand gestures. Marco's smile widened. She says any idiot can boil pasta. Can you make her Sunday gravy? I don't know what that is. Tomato sauce. But calling it sauce in this family is grounds for disownment. Marco squeezed her waist. Don't worry, she'll teach you. Nonna pulled Zoe down for a kiss on each cheek, patted her face affectionately, and sent them off with what sounded like a blessing and a warning. What was that last part? Zoe asked as they walked away. She said if I'm stupid enough to let you go, she'll haunt me after she dies. I like her. Everyone does. It's exhausting. They made their way through more relatives. Zoe's head spun with names and faces. But gradually, she relaxed. Marco stayed close, his presence grounding. When she couldn't remember someone's name, he whispered it. When Uncle Vincent's stories got too embarrassing, he redirected. When Aunt Carmela asked pointed questions, he answered smoothly. They were a team. It felt natural. Then came the moment that changed everything. Zoe excused herself to find the bathroom. On her way back, she got turned around in the massive house. She was wandering down a hallway hung with family photos when she heard voices in a nearby room. Aunt Carmela's voice, unmistakable. I'm telling you, Isabella, something isn't right. Zoe froze. Carmela, not tonight, Isabella said tiredly. It's Mama's birthday, which is exactly why we need to discuss this. That girl appeared out of nowhere. No history with Marco, no warning, and suddenly she's at every family event? She makes him happy, isn't that enough? Happy or convenient? Carmela's voice sharpened. I saw the envelope, Isabella, the one Leo picked up at the last gathering. $10,000 written right on it, in that girl's purse. Zoe's blood turned to ice. There's an explanation. Is there? Because it looks an awful lot like you paid someone to pretend to be interested in your son. Silence. Zoe should leave, should walk away. But her feet were rooted to the floor. When Isabella spoke again, her voice was strained. I did what I thought was best. Madonna. Carmela's disgust was palpable. You actually paid her? It was supposed to be one afternoon. The Castellanos needed to see Marco settled, and I saw an opportunity. You manipulated your own son. I gave him a chance to see what he's been missing, and look what happened. They're really together now. It became real. Did it? Or is she just a good actress collecting paychecks? Zoe couldn't breathe. She backed away slowly, then faster, until she was nearly running back to the party. Marco found her immediately. Hey, what's wrong? You're pale. I need some air. He guided her to a quiet corner of the garden, away from the crowd. Talk to me. Zoe opened her mouth, closed it. What could she say? That his aunt knew the truth? That her presence here was based on a transaction his mother had orchestrated? Zoe. Marco tilted her chin up gently. What happened? Before she could answer, a small voice interrupted. Zoe! Leo, the 10-year-old son of one of Marco's cousins, ran up with a soccer ball. Want to play? Leo, not now, Marco started. It's okay, Zoe said quickly, grateful for the interruption. Sure, let's play. They spent 20 minutes kicking the ball around with Leo and a handful of other kids. It gave Zoe time to think, to breathe, to plaster on a smile that felt increasingly fragile. When Leo finally ran off to get food, Marco pulled Zoe to a bench. Now, tell me what's going on. I overheard your aunt talking to your mother. Zoe couldn't look at him. She knows about the money, about how we met, all of it. Marco went very still. What did she say? That I'm probably just a good actress, that your mother manipulated you. Zoe forced herself to meet his eyes. Marco, she's not wrong. This did start as a transaction. Maybe she's right to question whether any of it's real. Do you question it? I don't know. The words burst out. I don't know what's real anymore. When I'm with you, it feels real. But then I remember how we started, and I wonder if I'm just playing a role I've gotten too comfortable in. Marco took her hands. Look at me. She did. I don't care how this started. I don't care that my mother paid you or that we met under ridiculous circumstances. His voice was fierce. I care that you laugh at my terrible jokes, that you call me out when I'm being stubborn. That you remember my nephew's name and play soccer with him even when you're upset. That's real. We're real. But your family, my family will understand, or they won't. Either way, it doesn't change how I feel. He cupped her face. Unless it changes how you feel. Zoe's heart ached. It doesn't. But Marco, if we do this, if we're really together, there can't be any more pretending. No more money, no more performances. Just us. That's all I want. What about the Castellano deal? What about looking stable for your business partners? I'll figure it out. I always do. He kissed her forehead. But I can't figure out how to do this without you. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But before she could answer, Aunt Carmela appeared on the garden path. Her expression was carefully neutral. Marco, a word. Marco's jaw tightened. Later, Zia. Now. It wasn't a request. He looked at Zoe. I'll be right back. It's fine. Go. She watched him walk away with Carmela, their heads bent in conversation. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in Marco's shoulders. Gianna appeared at her side. Don't mind Carmela. She's protective of Marco. Always has been. She thinks I'm using him. She thinks everyone is using him. It comes from watching his father use people their whole lives. Gianna handed her a glass of wine. For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. I haven't seen him this happy in years. Even if we started under weird circumstances? Gianna laughed. Honey, this is an Italian family. Everything starts under weird circumstances. My parents met when my mom accidentally hit my dad's car. Uncle Vincent and Aunt Carmela were arranged by their families. Half these marriages started as business deals or family obligations. She clinked her glass against Zoe's. What matters is where you end up, not where you started. The party continued around them. Toasts were made to Nonna, who basked in the attention. Food appeared in endless waves. The band played, and couples danced. Marco found Zoe again as the sun was setting. The garden bathed in golden light and string lights just beginning to glow. Dance with me, he said. I don't know how to dance like this. Good thing I do. He pulled her onto the dance floor, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. Just follow me. They swayed to the music, and gradually Zoe relaxed into his arms. What did Carmela say? She asked quietly. That she's watching us. That if I get hurt, she'll make sure you regret it. He smiled slightly. And then she said, if you hurt me, it'll mean you're real, because only real relationships hurt. That's weirdly profound. She has her moments. Marco pulled her closer. She also said she approves, in her terrifying way. Really? Really? Apparently you passed some test I didn't know you were taking. They danced in silence for a moment. Then Zoe said, I want this to be real, just so you know. It already is. No more money. No more money, he agreed. No more performances. Just us. He kissed her temple. Starting now. Zoe let herself melt into him, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, something that started with a lie could become the most honest thing in her life. The music swelled, family and friends danced around them, and for the first time since Isabella Bianchi had sat down at her table, Zoe felt like she was exactly where she belonged. But as the evening wore on and she caught Aunt Carmela watching them with calculating eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that their real test was just beginning. 3 days after Nonna's party, Zoe's phone rang at 2 in the afternoon with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. Hello? Zoe Schuyler? A man's voice, smooth and vaguely familiar. It's Daniel. Daniel Chen. Her ex-boyfriend. The one who'd ghosted her after 4 years together and married someone else 3 months later. Zoe's stomach dropped. How did you get this number? LinkedIn. Look, I know this is weird, but I saw your picture with Marco Bianchi at that charity event last week. His voice lowered. We need to talk. About him. About his family. I have nothing to say to you, Daniel. Then just listen, please, 5 minutes. There are things you should know before you get in too deep. Every instinct screamed at her to hang up, but curiosity, or maybe old hurt, made her hesitate. 5 minutes, that's it. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Main. Tomorrow at 3? Fine. But Daniel, if this is some game, it's not. I promise. He paused. I'm just trying to help. He hung up before she could respond. Zoe stared at her phone, heart racing. She should tell Marco. They'd promised honesty. But what if Daniel actually had information she needed? What if there was something about Marco's world she didn't understand? She decided to meet Daniel first, then tell Marco. No secrets, just delayed transparency. That night, Marco called like he did every evening. They talked about his day, tedious contract negotiations, and hers, a bridezilla client who'd changed the wedding theme for the 4th time. Come over, Marco said suddenly. I'll make us dinner. You can't cook. I can order very expensive takeout and pretend I made it. Zoe laughed despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Tempting, but I have an early morning tomorrow. You're working too hard, says the man who just told me he's been in meetings for 12 hours straight. That's different. How? Because I'm thinking about you the whole time, so it doesn't count as work. Her heart squeezed. You're ridiculous. You love it. The scary thing was, she did. After they hung up, Zoe lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She should cancel with Daniel. This was stupid, reckless. But she didn't cancel. The next day, she left work early and headed to the coffee shop. Daniel was already there, looking exactly as she remembered. Pressed button down, perfectly styled hair, that easy smile that used to make her feel special and now just made her feel tired. Zoe. He stood when she approached. Thanks for coming. She sat without shaking his offered hand. Clock's ticking. What do you want? Daniel had the grace to look uncomfortable. First, I owe you an apology for how things ended. I was a coward. You were an asshole, but that's not news. What's this about Marco? He pulled out his phone, showed her a news article. Do you know what the Bianchi family really is? Zoe scanned the headline. Legacy of violence. The Bianchi Empire's dark past. I know his father was involved in questionable business, she said carefully. Marco's been working to legitimize everything. Has he told you what questionable means? Daniel leaned forward. His father wasn't just a tough businessman, Zoe. The old man had connections to people who didn't negotiate. They intimidated. Marco's trying to distance himself, but do you think his father's former associates are just going to let him walk away clean? That's his father, not him. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and even if Marco's trying to go straight, there are people in that world who don't accept no for an answer. Daniel's expression was grave. There are forces at play that you don't understand. Zoe's hands clenched around her coffee cup. Why are you telling me this? Because I care about you, and I don't want to see you get hurt. He reached across the table. You're in over your head with these people. The Bianchis aren't some normal wealthy family. They're connected to a world you don't understand. And you do? My firm represents several families in those circles. I've seen what happens to people who get too close. His voice softened. Come back to your normal life, Zoe. Before it's too late. Zoe pulled her hand away. My normal life? The one where you discarded me like I was nothing? Where I worked myself to exhaustion and still couldn't get ahead? That life? You're angry, I get it. I'm not angry. I'm done. She stood. Marco treats me like I matter. Like I'm worth listening to. Like I'm more than convenient. She grabbed her purse. Whatever information you think you have, whatever warning you're trying to give me, I don't want it. Stay out of my life, Daniel. She walked out before he could respond, heart hammering. But his words stayed with her. Connected to things you don't understand. Was she naive? Was she seeing what she wanted to see in Marco, ignoring red flags because he was gorgeous and attentive and made her feel special? That evening, Marco showed up at her apartment unannounced with Thai food and a grin. Surprise. I know you said you were busy, but I missed you. Kelsey, who'd answered the door, gave Zoe a look that clearly said, you better tell him, before disappearing into her room. They ate on the couch, Marco telling her about Luca's disastrous attempt at online dating. He showed up to the date and she brought her ex-boyfriend as a just in case. Poor Luca. He's fine. He's already planning date number 2 with someone else. Marco set down his plate, turning to face her. Okay, what's wrong? Nothing's. Zoe, you've barely looked at me since I got here, and you've moved your food around for 10 minutes without eating. What happened? She could lie. Should lie. Instead, she told the truth. My ex called. Daniel. He wanted to meet, to warn me about you, about your family. Marco's entire body went rigid. And you went. I wanted to hear what he had to say. Instead of asking me. His voice was carefully controlled, which somehow was worse than anger. I planned to tell you after. I wanted to know what he knew first. So you could decide if I was worth the risk? Marco stood, pacing. What did he tell you? That my family is dangerous? That I'm connected to people who solve problems through force? That you should run while you still can? Marco. It's all true, by the way. He turned to face her, something raw in his expression. My father was everything Daniel probably said he was. Ruthless when he needed to be. Connected to people who didn't negotiate with contracts. They negotiated with pressure. Zoe's breath caught. I've spent 5 years trying to bury that legacy, legitimizing the business, cutting ties with anyone who wanted to keep operating the old way. It's cost me relationships, partnerships, respect from people who think I'm weak for wanting to build something clean. He stepped closer. But I'm doing it. And I thought, I hoped, you believed in that. In me. I do. Then why didn't you just ask me? The hurt in his voice cut deeper than anger. Why go to your ex instead of coming to me? Zoe stood, closing the distance between them. Because I was scared. Because what we have feels too good to be true and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because I've been burned before and I'm terrified of being that stupid again. I'm not him. I know that. Logically, I know that. But emotionally, she pressed a hand to her chest. I'm still learning to trust this, to trust you, to trust that someone like you actually wants someone like me. Someone like you? He grabbed her hand. You mean someone smart and funny and real? Someone who sees me and not just the name or the money? Someone who makes me want to be better than my father ever was? Tears stung her eyes. You see me like that? I see you exactly like that. He pulled her closer. But I can't keep proving myself if you won't let me. If you're always going to listen to people who tell you to run. I didn't listen to him. I told him to stay out of my life. But you still went. Marco's thumb brushed across her knuckles. That's what hurts. That you didn't trust me enough to just ask. They stood in tense silence. Then Zoe said quietly, You're right. I should have come to you first. I'm sorry. Some of the tension left his shoulders. I'm not perfect. My family's history isn't perfect. There are probably things in my father's past that would make you uncomfortable. He met her eyes. But I'm trying to be different, and I need you to believe that. I do believe it. She stepped closer. But Marco, you have to understand. This is all new to me. Your world, these expectations, the complicated history. I'm figuring it out as I go. Then figure it out with me, not behind my back. Okay. She took a shaky breath. No more secrets. No more going to other people first. Just us. Just us, he echoed. He pulled her into his arms, and Zoe let herself melt into the embrace. They stood like that for a long moment, both needing the contact, the reassurance. Finally, Marco pulled back. I should go. Give you space to think. Or you could stay. The words came out before she could stop them. Just stay. Watch a movie. Fall asleep on my couch. I don't want you to leave angry. His expression softened. I'm not angry, just hurt, but I'm working on it. They ended up on the couch, some action movie neither of them watched playing on the TV. Marco's arm around her shoulders, Zoe tucked against his side. It felt safe. Right. Can I ask you something? Zoe said during a particularly loud explosion on screen. Anything. What was your father like? Really? Marco was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, complicated. He could be charming when he wanted something, intimidating when he didn't get it. He loved my mother in his way, loved me in his way. But everything was transactional. Love, loyalty, family. It all had conditions. That sounds lonely. It was. Growing up, I never knew which version of him I'd get. The father who taught me to ride a bike, or the man who made his business partners afraid to say no. Marco's hand tightened on her shoulder. I swore I'd never be like that. Never rule through fear. Never make people earn basic respect and kindness. Is that why you let your mother set up the whole fake wife thing? Because you wanted to make her happy? He laughed softly. Partly, but also because I was tired of fighting. Tired of disappointing her by being single. It seemed easier to just play along. And then you got stuck with me. Best thing that ever happened to me. He kissed the top of her head. Even if you drive me crazy sometimes. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on her too small couch. When Zoe woke at 3 a.m. with a stiff neck, Marco was still there, one arm around her, looking younger in sleep, less burdened. She studied his face in the dim light from the TV. This man who carried the weight of his father's complicated legacy, who was trying so hard to build something better, who looked at her like she was the best part of his day. Daniel's warnings echoed in her mind. But looking at Marco now, peaceful and present, she made a choice. She was all in. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. She was drifting back to sleep when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from an unknown number. Saw you with Daniel yesterday. Interesting choice. Does Marco know you're meeting other men behind his back? A friend. Zoe's blood went cold. Someone had been watching her. Someone knew about the meeting. She should wake Marco. Show him immediately. But he looked so peaceful. And she'd just promised no more secrets, but... She deleted the text quickly, heart racing, and silenced her phone. Tomorrow. She'd tell him tomorrow. Beside her, Marco stirred, pulling her closer in his sleep. You okay? He mumbled. Yeah, she whispered, the lie tasting bitter. Everything's fine. It was a small lie, a temporary one, but it was the first crack in the foundation they were building, and Zoe had the sinking feeling that cracks only ever got bigger. The next morning, Marco left early for a breakfast meeting. Zoe stared at her phone, at the deleted text that she could still see in her mind. She should tell him. They'd just promised no more secrets. But what if telling him made things worse? What if some anonymous troublemaker was trying to drive a wedge between them? Kelsey emerged from her room, took one look at Zoe's face, and poured her coffee. Okay, spill. Zoe told her everything. Daniel, the warning, the text. So someone's watching you, Kelsey said slowly. Someone who wants Marco to think you're sneaking around. Which I technically was, meeting Daniel without telling him first. But you told him last night, right? Yeah, we worked through it. Then this is just someone trying to cause drama. Kelsey squeezed her shoulder. Delete it. Forget it. Move on. Don't let some anonymous coward ruin what you have. Zoe wanted to believe that. Wanted to dismiss it as meaningless. But something about the text felt calculated. Personal. Like whoever sent it knew exactly how to make her doubt everything. Her phone rang. Marco. Hey, she answered, forcing brightness into her voice. Breakfast ended early. Want to grab lunch? There's something I want to talk to you about. Her stomach nodded. Good something or bad something? Good. Really good. Meet me at that Italian place near your office? Noon. Okay. See you then. After he hung up, Zoe stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes from poor sleep. Worry etched in the line between her brows. She'd promised Marco honesty. Complete honesty. So why did the truth feel so dangerous? At noon, she met Marco at the restaurant. He was already there, looking unfairly put together in a gray suit, tie loosened, hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. He stood when she arrived, kissed her cheek, pulled out her chair. You sounded mysterious on the phone, Zoe said after they'd ordered. Not mysterious, just excited. Marco took her hand across the table. I've been thinking about what you said, about starting your own event planning business. Okay. What if you didn't have to save for years? What if you could start now? Zoe's heart began to race. Marco, hear me out. Bianchi Holdings throws a major charity gala every year. This year's planner just quit. Long story involving a feud with the caterer. The event's in 6 weeks, and we need someone talented, creative, and capable of pulling off a miracle. He squeezed her hand. I want to hire you, not as a favor, as your first real client. That's a huge event, which is why I'm willing to pay significantly above market rate, enough that after this one job you'd have the capital to quit your corporate position and launch your business properly. Zoe's mind spun. You're offering me my dream, just like that. I'm offering you a job you're qualified for. The dream part, that's all you. It was perfect. Too perfect. What if I mess it up? What if I can't deliver? You won't. I've seen you work. You're brilliant at this. Marco's eyes were steady, confident. And even if something went wrong, which it won't, I'd still believe in you. Tears stung her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because I want you to be happy. Because I believe in you. And because watching you slowly burn out at that corporate job is killing me. He smiled. Plus, selfishly, if you're working on my gala, I get to see you every day for 6 weeks. Zoe laughed through threatening tears. That's definitely selfish. I know. So, will you do it? She should be cautious, should think it through, should worry about mixing business and personal. Instead, she said, yes, absolutely yes. Marco's grin was brilliant. He stood, pulled her up, and kissed her right there in the middle of the restaurant. When they finally broke apart, Zoe was breathless and grinning. When do I start? She asked. Tomorrow. I'll have the contracts drawn up today. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Welcome to the team, Mrs. Schuyler. For the first time in months, Zoe felt like her life was finally moving in the right direction. She pushed thoughts of the anonymous text, of Daniel's warnings, of all her doubts to the back of her mind. This was her chance, her dream. Nothing was going to ruin it. But as they left the restaurant hand in hand, Zoe didn't notice the person across the street taking photos. Didn't see the way they lingered, watching. Didn't know that the complications she'd been worried about were about to get much, much worse. The next 3 weeks were a blur of controlled chaos. Zoe quit her corporate job with 2 weeks' notice, enduring her boss's passive-aggressive comments about throwing away a stable career for a relationship. She didn't care. For the first time in years, she was excited to wake up in the morning. The Bianchi Holdings charity gala was massive. 500 guests, multiple corporate sponsors, live entertainment, and a silent auction featuring items worth more than Zoe's previous yearly salary. The pressure should have been crushing. Instead, she thrived. Marco gave her complete creative control, a generous budget, and access to the company's resources. Luca became her unlikely ally, helping navigate vendor relationships and corporate politics. Even Isabella got involved, offering connections to florists and caterers she'd used for decades. You're a natural at this, Luca said one afternoon, watching Zoe negotiate with a difficult entertainment agent. Marco knew what he was doing when he hired you. You mean when he took a chance on his girlfriend with no major event experience? I mean when he recognized talent. Luca's expression turned serious. For what it's worth, you're good for him. I haven't seen him this happy since before his father died. The comment stayed with Zoe. She and Marco had fallen into an easy rhythm, working together during the day, stealing kisses in empty conference rooms, having dinner together most nights, sometimes at his place, sometimes hers. Sometimes with Kelsey and Luca, who'd started their own flirtation that everyone pretended not to notice. It felt domestic, real, like they were building something that would last, which is why the text messages started to worry her. They came sporadically, always from blocked numbers, always just vague enough to be deniable. Cute how he parades you around his office. Does he know you're just another employee now? Mixing business and pleasure. What could go wrong? Ask him about the last girl who worked for him, the one who thought it was real. Zoe deleted each one immediately. Didn't tell Marco, didn't tell anyone. She told herself they were just jealous nonsense, someone with too much time and not enough life. But they gnawed at her, especially that last one. 3 weeks into planning the gala, Zoe was working late in Marco's office. He'd given her a space there, when Aunt Carmela appeared in the doorway. "Burning the midnight oil?" Carmela said, settling into a chair without invitation. "Finalizing seating arrangements. Apparently half these sponsors have feuds I didn't know about." Zoe rubbed her tired eyes. "Is Marco still in his meeting?" "He'll be another hour at least. Board meetings always run long." Carmela studied her with those sharp eyes. "Can I ask you something, dear?" "Of course." "Why are you really with my nephew?" Zoe's hands stilled on her keyboard. "I'm sorry. It's a simple question. Is it the money, the lifestyle, the excitement of being with someone from our world? I'm with him because I love him." The words came out before Zoe could think them through. "Because he makes me laugh. Because he believes in me. Because when I'm with him, I feel like the best version of myself." Carmela's expression softened slightly. "You love him?" "Yes." Saying it out loud felt terrifying and liberating. "I do." "Have you told him?" "Not yet." "I'm waiting for the right moment." "There's never a right moment, dear. There's only now." Carmela stood, smoothing her elegant dress. "My brother-in-law, Marco's father, he didn't believe in love. He believed in utility. Everyone served a purpose, even family. Marco's not like that. No, he's not, which is why he's vulnerable in ways his father never was." Carmela moved to the door, then paused. "Someone's been asking questions about you. About your past, your finances, your relationship with Marco." Zoe's blood went cold. "Who?" "I don't know yet. But whoever it is has resources. They're digging deep." Carmela's gaze was intense. "If there's anything in your past that could be used against you or against Marco, you need to tell him, before someone else does." After Carmela left, Zoe sat frozen. Her mind raced through possibilities. Daniel? No, he'd been direct. If he wanted to cause problems, he'd have done it already. Someone from Marco's father's old world? Someone who didn't like Marco legitimizing the business? Her phone buzzed. Another blocked text. Ask him about Sophia, the last girl who worked for him, the one who thought it was real. Zoe's stomach turned. She grabbed her bag and headed to Marco's office. His meeting had just ended. She could hear people filing out. She knocked, entered without waiting. Marco looked up from his laptop, smiled when he saw her. "Hey, I thought you went home." "Who's Sophia?" His smile faded. "What?" "Sophia. Someone just texted me telling me to ask you about her, about how she was the last girl who worked for you and thought it was real." Zoe's voice shook. "Who is she, Marco?" He closed his laptop slowly, stood. "She was an employee. 3 years ago, she worked in our events department. And she developed feelings for me. I didn't reciprocate. She left the company." His jaw tightened. "Who's texting you?" "I don't know. Blocked numbers." "It's been happening for weeks." "Weeks?" Marco's voice rose. "And you didn't tell me?" "They were just stupid messages. Someone is harassing you and you didn't think I should know." He rounded the desk. "What else haven't you told me?" "Nothing. I didn't want to make a big deal. Someone is trying to get in your head, to make you doubt us. And you gave them weeks to do it." Marco's expression was a mix of hurt and frustration. "What happened to no more secrets?" "These weren't secrets, they were just..." "Show me." "What?" "The texts. Show me all of them." Zoe's hands trembled as she pulled up her phone. But when she went to her deleted messages, they were gone, completely erased. "They were here. I deleted them, but they should still be in my deleted folder." Marco took her phone, examined it. His expression darkened. Someone remotely wiped them. This isn't some jealous ex sending petty messages. This is someone with technical resources. Fear crawled up Zoe's spine. Why would anyone do this? To destabilize me. to make me look distracted and vulnerable. He handed back her phone, or to hurt you as a way of hurting me. Marco, you're scaring me. He pulled her close immediately. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to scare you. But I need you to understand. My father made people uneasy. Some of them don't accept that I'm different. And if they think you're important to me, they'll use me against you. Yes. His arms tightened. Which is why you have to tell me everything. No more trying to handle things alone. Zoe nodded against his chest. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have told you immediately. We'll figure this out. I'm calling our security team tomorrow, getting you protection. Marco, I don't need bodyguards. You do if someone is targeting you. His voice left no room for argument. And I'm going to find out who's behind this. They went back to his place, both too rattled to sleep. Marco made calls to his head of security, to Luca, to people Zoe didn't know. She sat on his couch, processing. Someone was watching her. Someone knew details about her life, her relationship, her movements. And she had no idea who or why. When Marco finally finished his calls, he sat beside her, pulled her into his arms. Talk to me, he said quietly. What are you thinking? That this is my fault. If I'd just told you from the beginning, this isn't your fault. Whoever's doing this would have found another way. He tilted her chin up. But we're in this together now. No more trying to protect me by keeping things from me. Same goes for you. He smiled slightly. Deal. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Zoe said, Tell me about Sophia, the real story. Marco sighed. She started working for us right after my father died. I was a mess, trying to take over the company, dealing with grief, fighting with my father's old partners who wanted me to fail. Sophia was kind, supportive. I confided in her. And she thought it meant more. Yes. When I didn't return her feelings, she accused me of leading her on, of using her emotional labor without reciprocating. His voice was tired. It was ugly. We settled out of court. She signed an NDA and left. Last I heard, she moved to Seattle, got married, started fresh. Is she behind this? I don't think so, but someone clearly knows about her, which means they've done their research. Zoe processed this. Your aunt said someone's been asking questions about me too, about my past. What could they find? I don't know. I don't have secrets. My life before you was boring. Work, bills, failed relationship with Daniel. She paused. Unless Daniel said something to someone, I'll have someone talk to him. Marco, just talk. Find out if he's been contacted by anyone, if someone approached him. He brushed hair from her face. I won't let anyone hurt you. You understand that? I don't want you fighting my battles. Too bad. I love you. The words hung in the air. Zoe's breath caught. What? I love you. Marco's voice was steady, certain. I've been trying to find the perfect moment to tell you, but apparently there's never a perfect moment. So I'm telling you now. I love you, Zoe. Completely. Terrifyingly. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. I told your aunt earlier tonight, but I should have told you first. I love you, Marco. He kissed her then, deep, claiming, full of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Stay tonight, Marco murmured against her lips. Every night, move in with me. Marco, that's fast. I don't care, I want to wake up next to you. I want your stuff cluttering my space. I want you here, safe, with me. His eyes were intense. Unless you're not ready. Zoe thought about her tiny apartment, about Kelsey's inevitable move-in with Luca, about how the only place she'd felt completely safe lately was in Marco's arms. I'm ready, she whispered. But Kelsey might kill me. I'll handle Kelsey. They spent the rest of the night planning how to move her things, how to break it to their families, how to navigate living together while working together. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt right, like everything was finally falling into place. Zoe fell asleep in Marco's bed, his arm around her waist, feeling safer than she had in weeks. which is why it was so devastating when she woke at 3 a.m. to find him gone. She found him in his home office, laptop glowing in the darkness, phone pressed to his ear. "Don't care what time it is. Find out who hired the investigator. I want a name by morning." He hung up, noticed Zoe in the doorway. "Sorry. Did I wake you? What's going on?" Marco rubbed his face tiredly. "My security team found evidence that someone hired a private investigator. They've been following you for weeks, photographing you, documenting your movements, gathering information." Zoe's skin crawled. "Who hired them?" "That's what I'm trying to find out." He stood cross to her. "But whoever it is, they're serious. This isn't just harassment. This is surveillance." "Why?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." He pulled her close. "And I'm going to stop them." Zoe wanted to believe him, wanted to feel safe. But as she looked at the files open on his computer, photos of herself she didn't know existed, leaving her apartment, entering Marco's building, meeting Daniel at that coffee shop, she felt exposed, vulnerable. Someone was watching, documenting, planning something. And despite Marco's arms around her, despite his promises of protection, Zoe couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The next morning, Marco insisted on driving her to the office himself. A security detail was assigned to watch the building, with someone monitoring the garage. The protection felt both reassuring and suffocating. Luca pulled Zoe aside when Marco was in a meeting. "He's worried about you," Luca said quietly. "I've never seen him like this. Protective to the point of obsession. Someone's been stalking me, Luca. I think concern is justified. I'm not criticizing, just warning you. When Marco loves someone, he becomes intense. He'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. I can handle intense. Can you handle what comes with it?" Luca's expression was serious. His father had people he loved. He protected them through any means necessary. Sometimes that meant things that weren't exactly above board. Marco's not his father. No, but he's his father's son. And if someone threatens you, I'm not sure there's a line he wouldn't cross. The words stayed with Zoe all day. That evening, as she and Marco reviewed final gala details, she watched him. The way his jaw tightened when his phone buzzed with security updates. The way his hand would find hers, squeeze gently, like he needed to confirm she was still there. He loved her. She didn't doubt that. But what would he do to protect her? And more importantly, what wouldn't he do? She was about to find out, because the next morning, Marco's security team identified who hired the private investigator. And the name changed everything. It was my mother. Marco's voice was flat, emotionless, but Zoe could see the muscle twitching in his jaw, the white-knuckle grip on his phone. "Isabella?" Zoe's mind spun. "Why would your mother hire someone to follow me?" "Not to follow you, to protect you." Marco dropped into his office chair, exhausted. "Apparently she's been having you monitored since Nona's party. When Carmela questioned whether you were genuine, my mother decided to prove you were." Zoe sat down slowly. "She had me investigated. She claims it was for your protection, to make sure no one from my father's old world was targeting you, to document that you weren't being threatened or manipulated." Marco's laugh was bitter. She thought she was helping. Those texts, the harassment, that wasn't her. That's someone else. But her PI might have inadvertently tipped someone off that you were important to me. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I'm so sorry." "My family is overwhelming," Zoe finished. "Intrusive? Absolutely insane?" "All of the above." Despite everything, Zoe almost laughed. "What did you say to her?" "Things I probably shouldn't have. Luca had to physically stop me from driving to her house at midnight." Marco stood pacing. "She's coming here this morning. To explain herself. To apologize to you." "Marco, I don't need—" "Yes, you do. And she needs to hear what this did. How it made you feel unsafe in your own life." His voice was steel. "She crossed a line. An hour later, Isabella arrived. She looked smaller somehow, older. Her usual confidence dimmed. "Zoe, dear." "Don't." Marco's voice cut through the office. "You don't get to dear her right now." Isabella flinched. She sat in the chair across from Zoe, hands folded in her lap. "I owe you an explanation and an apology." "Start with the explanation," Zoe said quietly. "When Carmela questioned your intentions, I was furious, but also worried. What if she was right? What if someone was using you to get to Marco?" Isabella's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I've watched people try to manipulate my son his entire life. I couldn't bear the thought of you being another one. So you had me followed. I had someone verify you were who you claimed to be, that no one was threatening you, that your feelings for Marco were genuine." Isabella's voice broke slightly. "I know it was wrong. I know I violated your privacy. But I was trying to protect both of you." "From what?" Zoe demanded. "I'm not a threat. I'm not manipulating him. I'm just in love with him. I know that now. The reports made it very clear." Isabella pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. "Everything we collected, I'm giving it to you. You can destroy it, keep it, whatever you want. It's yours." Zoe opened the folder. Photos of herself, going to work, meeting Kelsey for coffee, entering Marco's building. Detailed notes about her daily routine, her finances, her background check. It was violating, invasive, and somehow, in Isabella's twisted way, protective. "This is insane," Zoe said finally. "You know that, right? This is absolutely insane." "I know. Normal mothers don't hire private investigators to stalk their sons' girlfriends. I've never claimed to be normal." Marco made a frustrated sound. She's right, though." Zoe looked at Isabella. "You did this because you love him. In a completely inappropriate, boundary-violating way, but love." Isabella nodded, tears finally spilling. "He's my only child, my whole heart. And after losing his father, after watching him struggle to build something good out of something terrible, I can't lose him to someone who doesn't really see him." "I see him," Zoe said firmly. "I see him clearly, and I love what I see. I know that now. The investigators' reports made it painfully obvious." Isabella wiped her eyes. "You have lunch with your mother every Sunday and send her half your paycheck. You work 16-hour days on this gala because you want it to be perfect for Marco, not for yourself. You read the same book 3 times because it's his favorite, trying to understand why he loves it." Her voice softened. "You're real, and you love my son the way he deserves to be loved." Zoe felt her own eyes burning. "Then why does it feel like I'm constantly being tested?" "Because you are. Not by me anymore. I'm done testing. But by this world, by this life, by everyone who wants to use Marco for their own purposes." Isabella leaned forward. "If you're going to be part of this family, you need to understand. People will always question you, always assume you have ulterior motives. It's exhausting and unfair and constant. I can handle it. Can you?" Isabella's gaze was penetrating. "Can you handle photographers following you? Business rivals using you to get to Marco? People from the old world trying to hurt him through you? Because that's what this life means." Zoe looked at Marco. He was watching her with an expression that broke her heart. Hope and fear and love all tangled together. "Yes," she said firmly. "I can handle it, because he's worth it." Marco crossed the room, pulled her into his arms. "You don't have to." "I want to. I choose this. I choose you. All of it." Isabella stood. "Then I'll leave you two alone. But Zoe, thank you for loving him, for staying even when we make it impossible." She moved to the door, paused. "And I truly am sorry. I won't interfere again." After she left, Zoe and Marco stood in silence for a long moment. "Your family is a lot," Zoe finally said. "I know. If you want to run, I'd understand." "I'm not running." She pulled back to look at him. "But we need ground rules. With your mother. With your family. Clear boundaries." "Agreed. Whatever you need. I need you to trust that I can handle things. not send your mother or security or anyone to protect me without asking. That's going to be hard for me. I know, but necessary. She kissed him softly. We're partners, Marco. That means you don't get to make all the decisions about my safety or my life, even if I'm terrified of losing you, especially then. He nodded slowly. Okay, partners. Equal decision-making. I'll try. That's all I ask. The next week passed in a blur of final gala preparations. The mysterious texter went silent. Isabella's PI had apparently scared them off when they realized someone was watching back. The security detail Marco had assigned followed Zoe discreetly, a constant presence she'd learned to ignore. She gradually relaxed. The gala was in 3 days. Everything was coming together perfectly. Zoe moved the last of her things into Marco's penthouse. Kelsey threw a dramatic goodbye party that was really just an excuse to drink wine and gossip. Luca helped carry boxes and made terrible jokes about Marco finally having to share closet space. It felt like they were building something real, permanent. The night before the gala, Zoe was doing a final walkthrough of the venue when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Hello? Zoe Schuyler? A woman's voice, professional. This is Amanda Chen. Daniel's wife. Zoe's stomach dropped. Oh, hi. I hope I'm not bothering you, but I think we should talk. About Daniel. About what he told you about Marco Bianchi. I really don't think... He lied to you about Marco's family, about the danger. He was paid to scare you away. Amanda's voice was tight. I found the bank records. $50,000 deposited 3 weeks ago. I'm leaving him, but I thought you should know the truth. Wait. Someone paid Daniel to warn me off? Yes. And I'm pretty sure I know who, but I need to talk to you in person. Can we meet? Tomorrow, before your event? Zoe's mind raced. Who paid him? Tomorrow, please. I have documents, proof, things you need to see. The line went dead. Zoe stood frozen in the empty ballroom, heart hammering. Someone had paid Daniel to lie to her, to scare her away from Marco. Who and why? She pulled out her phone, started to dial Marco, then stopped. What if this was another trap? Another attempt to destabilize them? She'd meet Amanda first, get the proof, then go to Marco with something concrete. No more secrets, just strategic information gathering. What could go wrong? The next morning, Zoe met Amanda at a quiet cafe across town. Daniel's wife was polished, professional, with the hardened look of someone who'd been disappointed too many times. Thank you for coming, Amanda said, sliding a folder across the table. I'm sorry about all of this. I didn't know what Daniel was involved in until I found these. Zoe opened the folder. Bank statements showing a $50,000 deposit. Email printouts between Daniel and an encrypted email address. Instructions to discourage the Schuyler woman and emphasize family danger. Do you know who sent these? Zoe asked. The emails are encrypted, but I had a tech friend trace them. They originated from a firm that represents several families in... Amanda hesitated. In circles connected to Marco's father's old world. People who worked with the Bianchi family years ago. Zoe's blood went cold. Why would they want me gone? I don't know, but whatever you're involved in with Marco Bianchi, someone powerful wants you out of the picture. Someone with resources and connections. Have you told anyone else about this? Just you. And now I'm deleting everything and pretending I never saw it. I have kids, Zoe. I can't get mixed up in whatever this is. Amanda stood. Be careful. These aren't people who play fair. After Amanda left, Zoe sat with the documents, mind reeling. Someone from the old world. Someone who'd worked with Marco's father. Someone who saw her as a threat. But why? She pulled out her phone to call Marco. Zoe Schuyler. She looked up. A man stood beside her table. Older, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm sorry, do I know you? Not yet, but you should. He sat without invitation. My name is Vincent Castellano, Antonio's brother, and we need to have a very important conversation about your future with Marco Bianchi. Zoe's heart raced. I should call. Please don't. This conversation is better had privately. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. You're a lovely girl, smart, genuine, clearly smitten with young Marco. But you're also a problem. Excuse me? Our families have been negotiating a more comprehensive partnership, one that would be greatly strengthened by a marriage alliance between our children. He smiled coldly. Between Marco and my niece, Sofia. Zoe remembered Sofia, quiet, beautiful Sofia Castellano from the dinners. Marco and I are together. For now, but you're a temporary comfort. A distraction. Vincent leaned forward. Marco has responsibilities, to his family, to our business arrangement, to building something that honors his father's memory. We paid Daniel Chen to scare you off thinking you'd see reason. Obviously that didn't work. So now I'm asking directly, how much do you want to disappear quietly? Fury burned through Zoe's shock. I'm not for sale. Everyone's for sale. It's just a matter of price. Not me, and not Marco. She stood, grabbing her bag. Your plan failed. Marco loves me. I love him. And whatever arranged marriage you're planning, he'll never agree to it. Vincent's expression hardened. Then you're putting him in a very difficult position. One that might force us to reconsider our entire business relationship. Millions of dollars, dozens of jobs, his mother's financial security, all at risk because he chose a girl who doesn't understand our world. The words hit like a slap, but Zoe held her ground. If your business relationship depends on controlling his personal life, then maybe it's not worth having. She walked out before he could respond, hands shaking so hard she could barely dial. Marco answered on the first ring. Zoe, what's wrong? Where are you? Office. What happened? I'm coming to you. Right now. We need to talk. She made it to his building in 15 minutes, practically ran to his office. Marco met her at the door, took one look at her face, and pulled her inside. Talk to me. She told him everything. Amanda, the documents, Vincent Castellano's ambush. Marco's expression went from concern to fury to something cold and dangerous. Vincent approached you, directly. He said they want you to marry Sofia, that our relationship is jeopardizing some business deal, that he paid Daniel to scare me off. Son of a bitch. Marco pulled out his phone, dialed. Antonio, we need to talk. Now. Your brother just threatened my girlfriend and admitted to paying someone to harass her. A pause. I don't care about the meeting. Get here. This is more important. He hung up, turned to Zoe. I'm ending this. The Castellano partnership, all of it. If they think they can manipulate me through you, Marco, wait, think about this. There's nothing to think about. They crossed a line. But what if he's right? What if walking away costs your company millions? Costs people their jobs? Then I'll find another way. I always do. He cupped her face. But I won't sacrifice you. Not for any deal, any amount of money, any business relationship. You are more important than all of it. Tears stung her eyes. You'd really give up that much? In a heartbeat. He kissed her softly. You're my priority. Always. A knock interrupted them. Luca entered, face grim. Antonio Castellano is here, with Sofia and Vincent. They're demanding to see both of you. Marco and Zoe exchanged glances. Showtime, Marco said, taking her hand. Ready? Not even a little bit. Good. Neither am I, but we're doing this anyway. They walked together to the conference room, hand in hand, united. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Antonio Castellano sat at the head of the conference table like he owned it. Sofia stood by the window, looking miserable. Vincent leaned against the wall with a smug expression that made Zoe's blood boil. Marco didn't let go of Zoe's hand as they entered. Antonio. Marco said evenly. I wasn't expecting all of you. Clearly. Antonio's gaze flicked to their joined hands. Sit, please. We have much to discuss. Marco pulled out a chair for Zoe, then sat beside her. Luca positioned himself near the door, support and guard all at once. Before anyone says anything, Marco began, his voice controlled but dangerous. You should know that Vincent approached Zoe this morning, offered her money to leave. After paying her ex-boyfriend to frighten her away weeks ago, he admitted to all of it. Antonio's expression darkened. He turned to his brother slowly. Vincent, is this true? Vincent shrugged, unbothered. I was trying to protect our interests by threatening the woman Marco loves. Antonio's voice rose, accent thickening with anger. By going behind my back, by paying some nobody to harass her. Someone had to do something. You were too soft, too willing to let him throw away a perfectly good arrangement for some girl. There was no arrangement. Sophia's voice cut through the room, sharp and clear. Everyone turned to stare at her. She stepped forward, hands clenched at her sides, chin raised. Uncle Vincent has been pushing this marriage idea for months, talking about family alliance and strengthening partnerships. But Papa never agreed to it. Neither did I, and neither did Marco. She looked at her father. Tell them, Papa. Tell them the truth. Antonio sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older. Sophia is right. Vincent suggested a marriage alliance months ago. I considered it briefly, very briefly, before I met Zoe at that first dinner. But after seeing Marco with her, seeing how different he was, how happy, he shook his head firmly. I told Vincent no, multiple times. Our business partnership with the Bianchis would stand on its own merits, not on forced marriages. You're making a mistake. Vincent started. Enough. Antonio's command silenced him instantly. You overstepped. Drastically. You harassed an innocent woman. You paid someone to lie to her. You tried to manipulate my business partner and my daughter. His voice dropped to something dangerous. And you've jeopardized our family's relationship with the Bianchis and our reputation in every circle that matters. He turned to Marco. I apologize. My brother acted without my knowledge or consent. What he did was unconscionable. Marco's jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. He threatened Zoe. Tried to buy her off like she's some kind of obstacle to be removed with money. I know, and it's unacceptable. Antonio stood. Vincent will be removed from all business dealings between our families immediately. His role in our family business will be reconsidered. The weight behind that word made Vincent pale slightly. If you wish to end our partnership entirely, I'll understand and respect that decision. The room fell silent. This was it, Marco's chance to walk away clean, to cut ties with a family that had tried to manipulate him. Zoe squeezed his hand gently. Marco looked at her, something unspoken passing between them. Then he turned back to Antonio. I don't want to end our partnership. You've been fair, honest, and supportive. You've given me the credibility I needed to move forward. He paused. But this can't happen again. No more interference in my personal life. No more schemes or arrangements or attempts to control who I love. And Vincent stays away from both of us. Completely. Agreed. You have my word. Antonio extended his hand. And Vincent's actions will have consequences. I promise you that. Marco shook it firmly. Then he turned to Vincent, his voice dropping to something quietly lethal. Stay away from Zoe. Stay away from me. If you come near her again, business relationship be damned, you'll regret it. And that's not a threat. It's a promise. Vincent's smug expression had vanished entirely. He looked between Marco and Antonio, realized he had no allies left in the room, and nodded once, stiffly. We're done here, Antonio said dismissively, and Vincent left without another word, his shoulders rigid with barely suppressed rage. Sophia approached Zoe hesitantly once her uncle had gone. I'm so sorry. I had no idea Uncle Vincent was doing any of this. If I'd known, I would have stopped him. It's not your fault, Zoe said gently, meaning it. But for what it's worth, I hope you find someone who chooses you freely, really chooses you. Not because of business or family pressure or arrangements. Sophia smiled sadly, but there was warmth in it. Thank you, and I hope Marco knows how lucky he is. He does, Marco said, pulling Zoe closer against his side. Every single day. After the Castellanos left, Antonio clasping Marco's shoulder in a gesture of genuine respect, Sophia giving Zoe a quick, grateful hug. Zoe collapsed into a chair. "That was the most intense thing I've ever experienced," she said. "Welcome to my life," Marco replied, but he was smiling slightly. "It doesn't get less complicated." "Good thing I like complicated." Luca laughed from the doorway. "You two are insane and perfect for each other." He checked his watch. "Also, you have a gala in exactly 6 hours. Might want to start getting ready." Zoe's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, the gala. I completely forgot about the gala." "How do you forget about the event you've been planning for 6 weeks?" Marco asked, amused. "Because I was too busy being threatened by business rivals and defending our relationship." But she was smiling, the tension finally breaking. "Come on. We have work to do." They spent the next few hours in controlled chaos. Final vendor confirmations, last-minute adjustments, Marco getting into his tuxedo while Zoe coordinated with the venue staff via phone. When she finally had a moment to get ready herself, Marco watched her emerge from his bedroom in the floor-length emerald gown she'd chosen weeks ago. He went completely still. "You're staring," she said, adjusting her necklace, her grandmother's pearls, because some things were too important not to wear. "Can't help it. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. You're biased. Extremely. And I don't care." He crossed to her, took her hands. "Thank you." "For what?" "For standing up to Vincent. For not running when things got complicated. For choosing me even when it would have been easier to walk away. Marco, I mean it. You could have taken his money. Could have decided this was all too much. But you didn't. You fought for us." His eyes were intense. "I will never forget that." She reached up, touched his face gently. "I'll always fight for us. That's what you do when you love someone. I love you too." He kissed her softly. "Now let's go show everyone what we've built together." The gala was everything Zoe had dreamed it would be, and more. The ballroom glowed with soft, elegant lighting. Floral arrangements were perfection. The entertainment was flawless. 500 guests in evening wear mingled, bid on silent auction items, and enjoyed world-class food and music. Every detail she'd obsessed over for 6 weeks came together beautifully. The speeches were moving. The auction raised twice the projected amount. By the end of the night, Marco's company had cemented its reputation not just as legitimate, but as a force for good. During dinner, Marco stood to make a toast. Zoe assumed it was the standard thank you speech to sponsors and guests. She was wrong. "Before we continue with the evening," Marco began, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I need to say something personal." Zoe's stomach flipped. What was he doing? 6 weeks ago, I hired someone to plan this event. Someone talented, creative, and capable of miracles. His eyes found Zoe's across the room. Someone who took a chance on me and my company when she could have played it safe. Who worked 16-hour days to make tonight perfect. Who believed in what we're building here. He came around the table, and Zoe's breath caught as he knelt beside her chair. But what I didn't expect was that she'd become so much more than an event planner. She'd become my partner, my best friend, the person I want to build a life with. He pulled out a ring box, and the entire ballroom fell silent. "Zoe Schuyler, we started in the most ridiculous way possible. My mother paying you to pretend to be my wife for one afternoon." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. But somewhere along the way, pretending became the most real thing in my life. Tears were already streaming down Zoe's face. "I love you. I love your determination, your kindness, your refusal to let anyone, including me, push you around. I love how you take care of everyone but hate when people try to take care of you. I love that you make me want to be better than my father, better than anyone expects." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't promise you a simple life. My family's complicated, my past is messy, and there will always be people who question us. But I can promise you'll never doubt how much I love you, how much I choose you, every single day." The room was utterly silent, hundreds of people holding their collective breath. "So, Zoe Schuyler, will you marry me? For real this time?" Zoe couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She pulled him up, cupped his face in her hands, and through her tears, said the only word that mattered. "Yes, yes, Absolutely yes. The ballroom erupted in applause and cheers as Marco slid the ring, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds, onto her finger and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, the celebration was deafening. Isabella appeared, sobbing happy tears, pulling them both into a hug. I knew it. From that first night, I knew. Ma, you paid her to pretend, Marco reminded her, but he was grinning. And look how well it worked out. Isabella was unrepentant, radiating joy. Best $10,000 I ever spent. Kelsey materialized next, screaming, practically tackling Zoe. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Luca hugged Marco, then leaned close to murmur something that made Marco laugh and shove him away affectionately. Even Aunt Carmela appeared, pulling Zoe aside with surprising gentleness. You're good for him, dear. Don't let anyone, not Vincent, not anyone, tell you different. You belong here. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations, celebration, and joy. The gala continued around them, but Zoe and Marco existed in their own bubble, hands clasped, unable to stop smiling. As the last guests filtered out and venue staff began cleanup, Marco pulled Zoe onto the empty dance floor. Dance with me, fiancé, he said, and she loved the way that word sounded in his voice. They swayed together to silence. No music needed, just the two of them and the soft glow of lights being dimmed around them. This night was perfect, Zoe whispered. You made it perfect. The event, the moment, everything. We made it perfect, together. Marco kissed her temple, held her closer. 3 months, small ceremony, just family and close friends. Perfect. She looked up at him. And Marco? No more secrets from here on out. About anything. No more secrets, he agreed. Just us. Building something real. Something that started with the most ridiculous lie, and became the truest thing I've ever known. They stood together in the beautiful space Zoe had created, in the life they were building together, surrounded by evidence of what they could accomplish as partners. And for the first time in both their lives, everything felt exactly, perfectly right. 3 months passed in a blur of wedding planning, laughter, and building their life together. Zoe officially launched Skylar Events from a small office Marco helped her lease, insisting it be separate from his building so she'd have complete independence. Her first clients came from gala attendees who'd been impressed by her work. Within weeks, she had a waiting list. Marco legitimized the last pieces of his father's legacy, severing final ties to anything questionable. Antonio Castellano became not just a business partner but a genuine friend. Vincent, meanwhile, had been quietly removed from all Castellano business operations and hadn't been heard from since. Isabella, true to her word, stopped interfering, mostly. She still called daily with suggestions about wedding flowers, but Zoe had learned to deflect with affection rather than frustration. The wedding venue was the same vineyard where Marco had proposed all those months ago. Intimate, beautiful, meaningful. 80 guests, close family, real friends. Simple elegance instead of ostentatious displays. The morning of the wedding, Zoe stood in the bridal suite staring at her reflection. The dress was ivory silk, fitted bodice with delicate lace sleeves, flowing skirt that moved like water. Her grandmother's pearls, always her grandmother's pearls, rested at her throat. Kelsey stood behind her, eyes already red. You're so beautiful I can't even make a joke. Zoe's mother, Linda, appeared at her side, squeezing her hand. Your grandmother would be so proud, sweetheart. Trevor, her younger brother, poked his head in, now looking surprisingly grown up in his suit. Ready, sis? More than anything. He offered his arm. Then let's get you married. The ceremony was outdoors, chairs arranged in neat rows facing an arch wrapped in white roses and greenery. A string quartet played softly as guests took their seats. Isabella sat in the front row in pale lavender, dabbing at her eyes before the ceremony even started. Luca stood as best man beside Marco, looking uncharacteristically emotional. Kelsey waited at the end of the aisle as maid of honor, clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. And at the altar, waiting with barely contained emotion, stood Marco. Charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie, just like he'd wanted. His hair slightly mussed despite obvious attempts to tame it, his eyes locked on the vineyard entrance, waiting. When Zoe appeared, his breath visibly caught. His hand went to his chest like he'd been struck. She walked toward him slowly, Trevor on one side, her mother on the other, taking in every detail, the way Marco's eyes never left her face, how he was openly crying and didn't care who saw, the soft gasps and murmurs of approval from their guests. When they reached the altar, Trevor placed Zoe's hand in Marco's with a warning whisper, "Take care of my sister." "With my life," Marco promised, voice rough with emotion. The officiant began speaking, but Zoe barely heard the traditional words. She was too focused on Marco, his thumb tracing circles on her hand, the way he kept smiling through tears, how his eyes held everything she'd ever wanted to see, love, commitment, certainty. When it came time for vows, Marco went first. "Zoe." His voice was steady despite the emotion behind it. "My mother paid you to pretend to be my wife, but you taught me what it actually means to be someone's partner." Soft laughter rippled through the guests. "You showed me that love isn't about control or protection or keeping someone safe in a cage. It's about trust. It's about choosing each other every day, especially on the hard days. It's about being seen, really seen, and loved anyway." He paused, composing himself. "I promise to be your partner in everything, to listen when you need to be heard, to step back when you need to lead, to stand beside you, not in front of you." His voice cracked slightly. "I promise to love you when you're confident and when you're doubting yourself, when you're making magic happen and when you're burning coffee at 3 a.m. because you forgot it was on the stove." Zoe laughed through her tears. "I promise to choose you, every single day, in every single way. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." Tears streamed freely down Zoe's face now. When the officiant nodded to her, she took a shaky breath. "Marco, when your mother sat down at my table 6 months ago, I thought it was the weirdest moment of my life." She smiled through tears. "Turns out it was the best moment of my life. I just didn't know it yet." More laughter, this time mixed with sniffles from the audience. "You saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. You believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You gave me space to be strong and permission to be vulnerable." Her voice wavered. "You taught me that I don't have to choose between independence and partnership, that I can be completely myself and completely yours at the same time." Marco's grip on her hands tightened. "I promise to be your partner, not your project, to challenge you when you need it and support you always. To build dreams with you, weather storms beside you, laugh with you until we can't breathe." She paused, meeting his eyes fully. "I promise to love you, not the image everyone expects, not the name or the legacy, but you. The man who burns coffee and reads the same book 5 times and calls his mother every Sunday even when she drives him crazy. The real Marco. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." The officiant smiled, clearly moved. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may—" Marco didn't wait. He pulled Zoe into his arms and kissed her deeply, thoroughly, while their guests erupted in applause and cheers. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing through tears. "I love you, Mrs. Bianchi," Marco whispered. "I love you too, though I'm keeping Skylar professionally. I know, but let me have this moment." They walked back down the aisle hand in hand as the quartet played and their guests stood, applauding. Flower petals rained down around them. Kelsey's doing, definitely. The reception was held in the Vineyard's event barn, transformed with string lights, flowers, and an atmosphere of pure joy. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Uncle Vincent stood first, raising his glass with a grin. To Marco, who finally found someone brave enough to put him in his place. And to Zoe, who apparently has the patience of a saint. We're all still figuring out how she tolerates him. Laughter and applause. Kelsey's toast was equal parts embarrassing stories and genuine emotion. Zoe called me after that first dinner with Marco's family, absolutely convinced she'd made a huge mistake. I told her to trust her gut, Turns out her gut was smarter than both of us. She raised her glass. To trusting your gut, and to love that surprises you. Even Aunt Carmela stood, her voice surprisingly warm. Some love stories start in unusual ways. Mine started with an arrangement between families. I met Vincent at a negotiation table, not a dinner party. But unusual beginnings don't make love less real. Sometimes they make it more precious, because you had to fight for it. She looked at Marco and Zoe with genuine affection. To fighting for love, and winning. The toasts continued. Marco's business partners, Zoe's former colleagues, friends from both their lives now woven together. When it was Isabella's turn, she stood with tears already flowing. I did something crazy 6 months ago. I saw a beautiful, graceful woman eating alone, and I had a feeling. So I sat down and made her the most ridiculous offer imaginable. She smiled at Zoe. I don't know if it was intuition or desperation or divine intervention, but I know it was the best decision I ever made. Not for me, but for my son. Because you gave him something I never could. A partner who sees him, not the legacy. Someone who chose him freely, not out of obligation. Her voice broke. Thank you for loving my boy, and thank you for letting me be part of this beautiful story. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The first dance was to an old jazz standard Marco had played for Zoe months ago during one of their late-night conversations. They swayed together, unbothered by the crowd watching, focused only on each other. What are you thinking? Zoe asked softly. That I want to remember this exact moment forever. You in my arms, our family and friends around us, knowing that tomorrow we get to wake up and do this all over again. Do what? Choose each other. She rested her head against his chest, let the music and his heartbeat surround her. Best choice I ever made. Mine too. The evening continued with dancing, laughter, and joy. At one point, Zoe found herself swept into a dance with Uncle Vincent, who told her stories about young Marco that made her laugh until she cried. Marco danced with Isabella, who whispered something that made him hug her tightly. Luca and Kelsey slow danced, trying to pretend it wasn't significant when everyone could see it absolutely was. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Marco and Zoe stood by the exit, thanking everyone for coming. Antonio Castellano embraced them both. You've built something good here, both of you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Sophia hugged Zoe tightly. I'm so happy for you. This is what it's supposed to look like. You'll find it too, Zoe assured her. I hope so. Finally, it was just family left. Isabella, Vincent, Carmela, Luca, Kelsey, Linda, Trevor. They stood together in the vineyard under the stars, sharing one last glass of wine. To new beginnings, Isabella toasted. To family, the one you're born into and the one you choose, Luca added. To love that survives absolutely everything, Kelsey said, squeezing Zoe's hand. They clinked glasses, and in that moment, surrounded by the people they loved most, Zoe felt something settle in her chest. This was home, not a place, but these people, this love, this life they'd built together through chaos and comedy and choosing each other again and again. Marco pulled her aside as the family began to disperse, leading her to a quiet corner of the vineyard where they could see the stars. Happy? He asked. Deliriously. No regrets? Not a single one. She turned in his arms. Do you ever think about that first night, when your mother ambushed me? All the time. Do you think we would have met without her interference? Marco considered. Probably not. We moved in different worlds. I would have stayed closed off, convinced I didn't have time for relationships. You would have kept working yourself to exhaustion, too practical to take chances on anything that seemed too good to be true. So we owe her everything. Don't tell her that. She'll never let us forget it. Zoe laughed. True. She's already taking credit for our entire happiness. She kind of deserves it, though. Marco pulled her closer. 6 months ago, I was miserable, alone. Convinced I'd never find someone who wanted me and not just what I represented. Then my mother hatched her ridiculous scheme and you walked into my life. Best worst idea ever. Exactly. He kissed her softly, then more deeply. Thank you for being crazy enough to say yes that night. Thank you for being worth the risk. They stood together under the stars, at the place where he'd first asked her to be his for real, now bound together legally and emotionally and completely. Ready to start our honeymoon? Marco asked. Where are we going again? Italy. 2 weeks. Just you and me and no obligations. Sounds perfect. He took her hand, led her toward the car waiting to take them to the airport. But before they reached it, Zoe stopped, pulled him around to face her. Marco? Yeah? I just want to say it one more time. I love you, the real you, and I'm so glad your mother is completely insane. He laughed, that full, genuine laugh she loved. I love you too. And yeah, my mother's insanity worked out pretty well for us. They drove away from the vineyard as the stars came out fully, heading toward their honeymoon and their future, and a lifetime of choosing each other. Behind them, Isabella stood with Vincent and Carmela, watching the car disappear. They're perfect together, Carmela said. I know, Isabella replied, smiling through happy tears. You got lucky, Isabella, Vincent said. That scheme could have gone very wrong. It wasn't luck. It was instinct. She looked at her brother and sister-in-law. And love. Sometimes you have to take a crazy chance on love. Speaking of crazy chances, Carmela said thoughtfully, watching Luca and Kelsey say goodbye by their cars, clearly not wanting to part. Do you think... Isabella's eyes sparkled with familiar mischief. Let's give them a few months. Let them figure it out on their own first. And if they don't? Vincent asked, already knowing the answer. Then I'll help, Isabella said sweetly. After all, I'm currently undefeated. 1 year later, Zoe sat in the same restaurant where it all began, waiting for her order. It had been exactly 18 months since Isabella Bianchi had sat down across from her with an impossible proposition. This seat taken. She looked up, smiling. Marco stood there, holding their 6-month-old daughter, Lucia. Always for you two. He slid into the booth, settling the baby in his lap. Lucia grabbed at his tie with chubby fingers, and he let her, completely unbothered. Your mother texted. She's on her way. Says she has very important news. Zoe made air quotes. Let me guess. She's starting a matchmaking service? Marco, don't give her ideas. With her success rate, she'd make a fortune. As if summoned, Isabella swept into the restaurant, immediately making a beeline for their table. She scooped up Lucia, cooing in Italian, pressing kisses to the baby's face. Once she'd settled in, Marco gave her a look. So, what's the emergency? Isabella's eyes sparkled with barely contained mischief. I was having lunch here last week, and I saw the most lovely young woman eating alone. Very professional, very kind to the staff, and I thought, Ma, no, Marco, darling, Luca really needs... Absolutely not. You're not doing this again. But Isabella was already waving to someone across the restaurant. A dark-haired woman in a police uniform approached hesitantly, looking confused but curious. Zoe, Marco, this is Detective Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, these are my son and daughter-in-law. They have a wonderful story about how they met that I was just telling you about. Zoe caught Marco's eye. He was trying not to laugh. Here we go again, Zoe murmured. Should we warn her? Marco whispered back. They watched as Isabella launched into her matchmaking spiel, as the detective's expression shifted from confusion to intrigue, as Luca, summoned by Isabella via text, no doubt, walked through the door looking resigned to his fate. Nah, Zoe decided, grinning. Let's see how this plays out. Because if her own story had taught her anything, it was that sometimes the craziest plans led to the most beautiful endings. And Isabella Bianchi's track record was now officially undefeated. She watched as Luca caught sight of the detective, as something shifted in his expression, as Isabella beamed with the satisfaction of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Zoe leaned into Marco's side, daughter between them, surrounded by the family they'd built from that one crazy proposition. Think they'll fall for it? Marco asked quietly. If they're anything like us? Zoe smiled. They won't stand a chance. Good. Good? Everyone deserves the kind of happiness we found. He kissed her temple, hand finding hers. Even if it starts with a ridiculous lie told by my completely insane mother. Especially then. Because in the end, that was the truth of it. Sometimes love found you in the strangest ways, through manipulation and schemes and mothers who refused to take no for an answer. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to say yes to the impossible, you found something better than anything you'd imagined. Something real. Something worth every crazy, complicated, beautiful moment it took to get there. Zoe squeezed Marco's hand, watched Isabella work her magic on two new, unsuspecting victims, and smiled. Life was good. Love was real. And somewhere in the universe, Fate and Isabella Bianchi were high-fiving.